Hi there, welcome to this week's live Q&A. If you would like to hop on and let me know you're watching, and I will be happy to receive any comments or questions that you'd like to ask me. So today we are looking at open plan space planning, and this is something that I get asked about a huge amount. The number one request for most of the homeowners that I work with is to create a large open plan kitchen, diner, and often with a seating area. And often they want this to connect really well to the back garden, because that's a lovely outdoor space that they want to be able to use better when they're, in the summer, and then to appreciate looking out onto the plants and so on during the colder months, even if they're not able to use that space outside. So the thing with open plan spaces is that you can create a huge space and then it just feels kind of cavernous, it's not very cozy, it feels uncomfortable to be in. So there are a few different things that you need to consider when you're looking at designing your open plan space. So we're going to get into that today. I'm Jane, I'm the founding director of iArchitect, and I specialise in working with homeowners of period property with potential who are looking to make their home suit a modern lifestyle better, and they want to retain the character, enhance the character of the original, and not necessarily replicate that in any modern, perhaps create quite a contemporary look with the modern additions. And then also I work in a very eco way, so the design that I put together has always got in mind protection of the planet. So an eco-design philosophy. So some tips on how you can look at your open plan space and design that better in terms of the way that you lay it out, what you put in there. So the first tip I would say is to, once you've got a plan drawn, a sketch is fine, then think about the ways that you're going to use that space and how many people are going to use that space at any one time. So you might think about the morning. Often we're talking about a kitchen in there, so it's kitchen diner is primarily the main function, and then often with this seating area. So how are you planning to use it? Think about in the morning, you've got breakfast, all your meal times, breakfast, lunch, dinner, tea, supper, whatever you want to call them. All those meal times, they happen every day. And sometimes at the weekends you might have more of them at home, or if you work from home you maybe have those at home as well. Think about all of those sort of typical rituals and what you would do on an average day-to-day basis, and you want to make sure that you're designing that space so that there is the minimal amount of frustration in your day-to-day. So what you want to do is think about how you're going to move through that space. So I would tend to draw lines from the door going into that space, and then any doors going out of that space, and look at how those lines intersect across the space, and if there are a way to make those routes simplified. So perhaps that means moving the doors, maybe taking those doors out completely if you don't need them. And then look at where you want to position furniture. So you want to make sure that any furniture that you're positioning is not going to be bang slap in the middle of where you want to walk, because then that's just going to cause a huge nuisance and annoyance on a day-to-day basis. If you're wanting to get from your cooker to your dining table, you want to be able to get there in as straight a line as possible with minimum things getting in your way. Obviously pets and children, you can't really help that, but furniture, you definitely don't want big chunky pieces of furniture in your way to bash into, or having to walk around to get your dinner from cooker to table. So that's just one example, and obviously there are lots of other things, but if you like to I'm just trying to think of something quickly. If you want to put your washing out to dry outside and you've got a utility room off this space, because most people look to put their washing machine outside of a big open plan space because washing machines are noisy, and if you don't tend to use your washing machine at night when everybody's asleep and you want to have it on during waking moments, then you probably want to put it away in a room, in a cupboard, where it can, you know, go into its spin cycle and not be disturbing you. So you want to think about how you're going to dry clothes, and I always prefer line drying things because it smells a lot better and you don't need to use that energy for drying them in a tumble dryer. Obviously, I'm based in Manchester. With the rain, it's not always a possibility to hang things outside to dry, but actually it's more often than not it is possible in a week to do that. So I personally would always be looking at how I can get from washing machine to outside into the garden in as straight a direct line as possible. And you might also be thinking about, you know, where you're going to take your rubbish out from the kitchen. You probably have recycling and things to take from the kitchen to take outside to different bins. Think about how that route is going to, where that's going to go, where's that movement going to go, because you don't want to be walking around heaping piles of stuff and having to make your way around furniture to do that. You just want to go straight directly to the door and out. So that is a key thing, movement patterns. And that's something, you know, in terms of movement, flow is a very, you know, people talk about flow in their homes, and that is how you do it. You think about your routes between one thing and another and make sure that those routes are as simple as possible and have got as few things as possible in the way, and then you'll have good movement flow. So if you've got any questions regarding open plan design, then please pop them in the comments below and I will take a look at them and see if I can help you out. So another tip is to cut out pieces of furniture. So measure up your furniture that you want to have, or have a look at types of furniture that you would like to have in this space and get an idea of the sizes of those pieces of furniture. Then draw them out to scale and cut them out, and then you can literally take those little pieces of furniture and move them around and play with them on your plan. So you've got your floor plan drawn out, you can put those little pieces of furniture onto the plan and arrange them into little groupings of furniture. So you want to create defined areas within the open plan space. So you might have a kitchen area, you might have a dining area, you might have a soft seating area. Maybe you have a particular hobby or a game that you want to play, or you have very young children. Maybe you want just an area of floor space where they can lay out their train tracks or whatever it is and play with those. So think about the sorts of things that are going to happen and the kind of furniture or equipment that you're going to want to have in that space to be able to do the things you want to do there, and then literally just move around, play with them and put them into different configurations. Depending on the scale of the space is going to determine how many people you're wanting to have in there at any one time. But when you're thinking about numbers of people, think about, you know, how big is your family? How many people do you have over when you're entertaining? And there is a sort of a rule of thumb of 8 people. If you've got a group of 8 people, that is the sort of biggest number of people that you can really have where you all are in a group having a conversation together. And once you start to go over 8 people, then the groups will tend to fraction into smaller numbers where people will be having their own individual little conversations in smaller groups. So really, for a grouping of seating, 8 is really the ideal for a sort of a maximum kind of day-to-day. If what you're looking at is having people where you're all together and you're all kind of participating in the same conversation. But if you have a much bigger family than that, you may want to think about different groupings throughout the space where maybe 3 or 4 people could sit together, or, you know, a group of 8 people in one space. But maybe you want to be able to consider, if you've got an extendable table, maybe on a day-to-day basis, there's only 4 or 5 or 6 of you in the home. But perhaps once a week or once a month, you may have a lot more people, some family, some friends who come over regularly, and you want to make sure that you're able to extend your table so that all the people you want to have sit down dinner can have sit down dinner. Perhaps you're more of a buffet sort of family and you like to have lots of people around entertaining, but you tend to not have a formal sit down dinner and you would tend to have a buffet arrangement. In that case, a kitchen with an island tends to work really well for a buffet arrangement, but just think about how does that work, and where people tend to like to hang around next to the buffet, so you want to make sure that there's plenty of space for people to be hanging around next to the buffet and other people to be walking around and getting past. It all depends on numbers of people. If there's just 2 of you, then all these considerations are going to be completely different. So think about how many people are going to be using this space at any one time. Is that a normal or regular occurrence? And so the numbers of people, what they're going to be doing, and how frequently, those are key questions to ask yourself. If you've got a family and you've got little children at the moment, one of the big things you're going to be looking at is storage for all those toys, and also space, just floor space for those toys. Brought out all those train sets, and my little one loves cars, driving cars around on the floor. All of that space that they need to be able to crawl around, push their toys about, generally make a bit of a mess on the floor. Then you want to have storage really close by so it's easy to clean up and tidy up and put out the way, but you do need that floor space for them to be able to do that. If that's important to you, maybe you have another room, a playroom where they go, and that's where all their toys are, and this open plan space is not where they're going to be doing that. But for most families that I work with, I've found that most of the time what they want is they want to be able to all be in the space at the same time together, preparing dinner, sitting, doing homework, and also for younger children to be playing at the same time as they're being, supervised whilst dinner is being cooked or breakfast is being cooked or whatever it may be. But if you are thinking long term and for this home and you're planning to be there for the foreseeable future, then you also want to consider what those children are going to be like in another 10 years' time when they become little teenagers. So that's another factor to take into account, is how your family is going to grow and change, and what different things can you imagine are likely to happen in the future. So if you don't have any experience of teenagers, then I would suggest that you go and have a chat with friends and family who do have teenagers, and even invite them round and see if you can test run a space or see what it's like to be with them in those sorts of spaces. Maybe they have an open plan space you can go around and visit and see how they as a family function in that space. It is actually a really good idea to test run a new type of space. So if you're looking at creating an open plan space and you've never had one before, it's really worthwhile going and just seeing if you can hire a cottage or somewhere to stay with your family, go for a weekend and test run somewhere with the kind of space that you're thinking about having, so you can really see what it's like to live in that space. And then you'll discover, if you actually like it, if you don't like it, if there are things that you like, and if there are things that you would like to do differently in your own home. So that is a good tip for a sort of a practice run of using that sort of space. And so those are my key tips really. So plan out your movement, play with little cut out pieces of furniture, and test run the space if you can. And then just literally think through how many people and what are they going to be doing in that space. And that is the best way to go about figuring out what you want to be able to do in an open plan space and where those different elements are going to be. I hope that's helped, and if you have any more questions about open plan design, please pop them in the comments below and I will look at them at some point very soon and get back to you. If you would like any more help with space planning and you're thinking about having an open plan space, then get in touch with me. I do home design workshops every Wednesday when I can help you design out your open plan space. I look forward to speaking to you. Bye for now.